Can you give me some advice for a senior leadership team in the first 100 days of working in a school?
I think you need to be really visible, highly visible, and be leading by example, so that you're in and around school, you're in classrooms, modelling, showing people what your expectations are, what you think excellence looks like, and really so they can see what you're all about and the way you do things. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I think that goes through everything that you do, the way that you talk, the way you talk about children, the way you talk to children, the way you talk about your local community. And that was something that was really key for us, was changing some cultural mindsets and an insistence on that. Sometimes that's difficult, but you are the person that they are all looking to, and you have to walk the talk in every way, and make sure that if actually you're saying that teaching and learning is central to what you're going to be doing in the school, that actually you keep that, you hold that true, and you take every opportunity to model that and model that approach.
And along with the modelling, I think that runs right through into the learning environment as well. So one thing that Kate was very clear about is what type of learning environment she wanted in school. She wanted it to be used by the learners to support learning, and I think looking back, we modelled that probably in my classroom first, and then for everybody else to see, and it was very transparent, and then that sort of filtered down through school.
What would be the features of these learning environments you're describing?
So one of the key things was working walls. So where the process of learning was displayed, so children were referring back to what they'd done the day before. It was up on the wall. It might not be perfectly presented, but it showed what they'd done the previous day. References to learning muscles up in the classroom for children to refer to. Lots of tools that the children could use, so lots of key vocabulary. And a vibrant learning environment, which is not how it had been before. It had been quite dull, and I can remember us saying, we're not giving our children, we were giving our children the best, so we wanted them to be in the best learning environment. It wasn't good enough, was it, to give them scabby pencils and scabby pencil pots and paper falling off the walls. We were setting an example.
I think it was really key for us that, and again as a community, what we've created here is exceptional. We have probably the best ICT provision in the borough. We have an amazing immersive space, and actually our children absolutely deserve excellence. They deserve the very, very best, and we've made sure that we've done that. And people sometimes say to me, where have you got the money from it? And sometimes I think, have I forgotten to pay someone over the last 6 years? But actually it's because we've not had a supply teacher in the school for 6 years. We've created a staffing structure that if people are off sick in the early days, I would go and cover, or would use other people. So I was really clear I wasn't going to waste £25,000 a year, which is what the school had been spending on someone to come and babysit the kids. We covered internally, and so we've used our resource in the right way, and it is all just about making there be excellence. I don't want to hold money in the school budget. I want to have really fantastic textbooks and books for children to access. I want to have the best IT provision that we can create, and that was all part of it, wasn't it? That real sense of we want excellence here, because actually our learners deserve excellence. A lot of the professional development work we've done has been underpinned by real unpicking research and evidence and an evidence base, and saying actually this is the rationale for this. This is, we're not just deciding we're going to do BLP because Guy Claxton was on a course and said we should do it. It's actually that when you unpick and you look at growth mindset and what you fundamentally believe makes great learners, you then take that and say, actually, so that means in our classrooms we will have tools for learning, because actually we want to create interdependence. We will use things like Kagan structures, because actually we really value that notion of communities of practice. So actually everything that we do here is really underpinned by some really sound theoretical knowledge, and we share that quite explicitly with staff as part of our professional development. So I think that then has made it easier, because the staff understand why we're doing it. Actually, they do it Whereas if I was just coming and saying, oh, actually, can you just do this because actually that's my particular whim this week, I think that's where you lose the consistency because you haven't got a real buy-in because there's not a really sound understanding of the rationale for why we're doing it.
So if you were to summarise for me what the principles of learning here are, how would you summarise those principles?
I think that the key principles of learning here are that we actively engage in learning. We're not passive recipients of the journey. That we learn collaboratively and sometimes we learn on our own, and it's about knowing when is the right time to make connections and when is the right time to carry it yourself. I think that it's about being reflective, and we've tried really hard to create an atmosphere where we value risk and we don't see mistake as failure but actually a critical part of the process of learning, because that's where you learn the most, when you get something wrong and you have to reflect on how you move forward from that.
And I think it's really key as school leaders, and it goes back to the earlier question about what you do in those first 100 days is, we model being learners constantly to our children and our school community, and that's really, really critical. And I think it's a really critical role of a head teacher, is that you are modelling, you should be the exemplar learner. So, you are the person who's reading everything and who's questioning and who's thinking and constant reflecting, because you set the example and the tone of your school culture. So if you're a really great and passionate learner, then actually that starts to permeate down and through your leadership team into your teaching staff and then into the children who access your school. Our year 6s particularly, but actually all the way through school from year 1, are really articulate about themselves as learning. So they're quite skilled in talking to you about actually whether they're really good at persevering, or whether collaboration's a bit of an issue for them, or maybe they're not so good at noticing, and they're really articulate about that. I think they tell you that they really enjoy school. I think you've only got to look at the behaviour and the learning behaviours in our school. They're quite used to adults coming into the room for various reasons, and they don't bat an eyelid. They're completely absorbed in their learning, and there's a real active engagement in their learning, isn't it? And a thirst for learning.
A commitment to it.
Yeah.
They're really committed to learning.
They see their part in the learning process, and that's really a significant cultural shift for these kids who actually just turned up and just went through the motions of being at school, and perhaps didn't have high aspirations for themselves. And there's a real buy-in to this place, and there's a real buzz about the place.